What's up, everybody? It is Thursday, November 21st. I didn't do a show last week because it's deer season. We're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I just got out of the cold tub. I think the air temperature is 35 degrees. The water temperature was 32.2. It was frigid. There's ice crystals in the water. I made it a whole 3 minutes. I ain't gonna lie to you. I feel pretty good. Right now, I'm sitting on the chair with my blanket and my sweatpants and my dog, drinking a cup of coffee, trying to get warm again. And before I get a workout in today, and felt called to talk about a couple things, really. There's no script today, which is usually my downfall, which turns into ramble. But I certainly, there's a few points that I want to make about life in general and things that have been on my mind lately and have come through life experience. One of those today was I had a meeting with Chris Uglum, who's my financial advisor. And if you remember, he was the guest in episode 3, the episode that was titled Define Your Financial Future, where he helped answer some questions about the financial world we live in privatized healthcare, and then, municipal healthcare and what the difference is. But anyway, long story short, annual meeting that just basically sums up the last year. It's been 1 year since I've invested money into whatever it is we invest money into. I don't even know, where does it go? But anyway, I've taken a sum of money and I've handed it over to Chris, and I've said, do what you can do. It turns out I had a good year. Some of that is based on the timing of when I entered the market. But I had a 21% return on my investment over the course of the year. Now, he wanted me to be very clear that that is not normal. And that is a reflection of a very good year, but I'm probably not going to see 21% returns year after year after year. So as he was telling me this, I was sitting there thinking, man, how often do we, and he's basically trying to get me to manage my expectations, right? So listen, next year, as long as this number, and so what I do as a layperson in the financial market is I look at how much money I started with, and then I looked at how much money I have now, and that tells me how well I'm doing, basically. And so I'm using that as a metric of success. When really the number I should be looking at, he said, is the margin, the percentage of return. So next year could be 15%, which is less than today's. And so if I look at it that way, I would look at, well, shit, 2025, I had a less successful year than 2024. But still overall, I had a 15% increase in my investments. So I need to manage my expectations on how that looks over the course of 3 years. And it really kind of got me thinking. I've kind of had a whole big, like a bunch of points I wanted to make about how I personally manage my expectations and how I personally chase goals and how I personally get wrapped up in false idols and how I come about some sort of epiphany in my life where I'm like, you know what? This isn't who I want to be or who I think I am. And I had this whole big spiel about, my evolution into deer hunting and the kind of idols I chased with that, and how the last 2 days have really kind of changed my opinion. And then it took a meeting with Chris to really kind of sum it up and into how we all manage our expectations, and more importantly, what to do when those expectations don't get met. And is there a difference between, pivoting and quitting. So like if you have a goal and you don't reach it, maybe you change the goal a little bit, is that quitting versus pivoting, and how I've kind of come about my definition of that. Um, it was a really good conversation this morning with Chris, not only about financial stuff, but how we manage our expectations in life, and then what to do because rarely, I think there's a very small exception where things actually work out the way that I think they're going to work out. And so my reaction to that and how I come back at it is really kind of evolved over the years. And I certainly think with age comes maturity, I would hope anyway. But have I have I changed have I changed my goal to fit my result, or am I changing my goal as a result of lessons learned? Am I lowering the standard? Am I hiring the standard? I don't know. I just know that um, there's a lot of hypocrisy that comes with life just naturally on its own, where you think one thing, do one thing, but yet the other thing happens, and you have to try to figure out, basically justify that. So this all started with my evolution as a deer hunter, and managing my expectations started when I was in, the archery circuit. Um, and I was a competitive archer for a long time, and hunting came along with that. I wasn't really, I didn't really enjoy hunting so much as I enjoyed shooting my bow. And hunting was a way to continue to shoot your bow, out in the field, to harvest animals in a time of the year where it was, the archery competition season was a little slower. So I kind of felt like archery and hunting kind of went hand in hand. The competitive side of archery and the hunting side of archery, I kind of put together. And I think that was a mistake. I did it because I felt that I had to. I was, shooting my bow uh, pretty much all over the Midwest. I had, things that I was privileged to, uh, discounted equipment and sponsorships, and I had access to, shops, and I really was doing what I thought well in the space. And a lot of it was because of my own personality, where I was going to go, basically I was going to go pro, like I've done everything else. Like I was going to do this well. And so my expectation every time I entered a tournament, and every time I entered a um, league, was to win. Period. Um, where I noticed things, what I noticed in that space was that my expectation did not necessarily align with a lot of the people that I hung out with. And that was, their expectation was to have fun. And I could never wrap my head around, like, shooting poorly was never going to be fun for me. So in order for me to have fun, I had to shoot well, and I had to be perfect, and I had to, like, there is a certain feeling, and I think I was telling my son this the other night, if for the golfers out there, and I don't golf because this is a side story, but because I couldn't be good at it. I tried. I took lessons. I had good equipment. I went to the range. I did the things that I needed to do to be good at golf, and I could just never be good at it. And it falls into the same line. Fun to me is doing well. So fun to me is nutting that 300-yard drive off the tee. But I couldn't duplicate it. I could get it every now and then, but I couldn't duplicate it. So it was not fun for me to shank one off into the woods or to shank one off into the water. And I've never understood the concept of how people, like, willingly spend money to pay to suck at golf. Like I can't wrap my head around it. Why I would go do that. And so I just stopped doing it. And there was no managing expectations on that. My expectations of golf was I was just not going to do well, and it was not going to be fun for me. So I didn't want to do it. There was no changing the goalpost. There was no moving the meter to bring down my expectations so that I could enjoy golf more. That's what it was going to be to me. Well, archery was the same deal, but the difference was I could replicate that feeling more often. So my version of nutting the 300-yard drive was you have a 38-yard bedded buck. I'm in an IBO competition. I guessed the yardage correctly. I settle my pin on the 12 ring, and my arrow nock replaces my pin, meaning that arrow goes exactly where I want it to go in the 12 ring at an unknown distance. And that feeling is the same feeling as hitting a home run, nutting that 300-yard drive, whatever your euphemism is. But I could replicate that feeling more often than I could replicate other feelings. So my expectations got real high. And if I missed my mark, so to speak, my reaction was failure. My reaction was negative. It was unacceptable. And so I would, now you have to pull your arrow and you have to go to the next target, and you can't replicate another bad shot. So you have to get your head right and make a better shot and do things. And so I would come off the course with expectations of winning. And if I didn't meet that expectation, the whole day was shit. I've basically wasted my time. I've wasted my money. I've wasted energy and effort. And physically back then, I was a different person. Mentally and emotionally, I think I was probably a little less wise than I am now. But so there were some things I could have done. Now, I won a lot of tournaments. I'm not lying. Like, I did really well. Like, I was successful in this space, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter is it was not fun because my expectations were so high that I could probably never achieve them. And what I noticed over time was it was taking me away from who I was. So I was becoming a person that I didn't really care to be, and really nobody really cared to hang out with. Like, I've shared stories in the past, and I'll share a quick one. One of them being I was shooting the Iowa Games, and this was my second year in the Iowa Games. I'd won the year before, so I was the defending champion. And I came out. It was very hot that day. I was very much not in very good physical shape back then. And the course was very difficult, and I was, in my opinion, not shooting well, to my standard. Excuse me. And it was starting to show, like, on my face and in my reactions, and we had to shoot with a official score so that there was no cheating, and which is fine. Like, I'm just saying, like, all of this was validated because we had to shoot with a score, and I was not shooting up to my standard. And I was really annoyed by it. And everybody in the group, I was with 3 other guys. I don't think I knew any of them. And then the scorekeeper. And I was really just kind of being a dick. And I came off the course. I was the last one to shoot. I was very slow. There was a group of people waiting for me to turn in my card. And several of them met me halfway down the hill and was like, "Hey, man, how'd you do?" And I said, "You know what? I did poorly enough that I don't think I'm going to turn in my card. Like, I'm ashamed. I didn't have a very good day, and I'm a little pissy about it." And so what I didn't know was a couple of them had shot really, really well that day, and they thought that this was the day that they, were going to get me, and rightfully so. They had a great day, and in hindsight, I'm very happy for them. They asked me what my score was. I told them, and the look on their face was like, this guy's a giant asshole. And so what had happened is I had shot 20 points higher than the second place finisher who had his best day ever. And I was certainly ungrateful for it. And I was kind of a dick, and no, not kind of, I was. And it was just, I couldn't fathom in my head why people go out and do things for fun when they've essentially did not perform well. And I still believe a little bit of that today, and we're going to get into why I believe that in a second. And I think sometimes when you believe something out of principle and it goes against what other people believe, you have to take that a little bit with whatever consequence comes your way, right? Like, I unequivocally at the time believed that it was not fun to spend my Sunday shooting shitty arrows. But I was with a whole bunch of people that did not think that way. They had fun because they were together. They had fun because they were outside. They had fun because of the challenge. They had fun because, they were doing something that maybe not everybody in their other social circles do. Like, they found a million reasons to have fun. And I only found one reason to have fun, and that was to win. And over time, it really wore on me to the point where I basically gave it up. I didn't basically give it up. I did. I had another episode at a tournament that I'd won. I thought I did poorly. I was like, F this, I'm leaving. I was really holding on tight. And for what? Like, at the time, to be a semi-professional, like archery cost me more money than I ever made. But that's just the time I was in. So now you fast forward to, I'm married. We're starting to have kids. I realized that I really have no legacy to leave my children at the time. Like, I don't build things. I don't fix things. Like, I don't have a trade that I can pass on to my children to make them, to help garner my legacy. Well, I convinced my wife that, there was a time when she didn't know me that I was pretty good. Like, I like to hunt and fish. And I was pretty good at shooting a bow. So maybe I should start getting into that again. That way, as my kids get older, I can pass something on. Like, I was pretty good at shooting a bow once. And I hunted, not really understanding what hunting meant. I did it because I thought I had to do it. I was certainly not good at it. But I do remember those times in the infancy of my hunting where I had to teach myself how to deer hunt, basically. Like, nobody in my family did it, or at least nobody that had any influence on me. I had to figure it out, just like I've done everything else. I taught myself how to shoot a bow, and I taught myself how to shoot a bow well, and I taught myself how to shoot well enough that I could compete at a high level. Well, deer hunting was the same deal. I had to figure it out. Like, so I bought a book. I read some things. I got some equipment, and I had kind of quit doing that too. And, I had some minor success. Like, it was like I shot some deer. Yes. Were they big deer? No. But I do remember, the point of this is, I do remember the juvenile feeling of being a new hunter and experiencing some of those things that I now take for granted. And because my expectations for that were very low. Okay. So, I did not have high expectations for my hunting prowess. Like, number one, I'm trying to kill something that is whole job is to stay alive. And so that in itself, and there's money and resources and time and permissions and a lot of things that go into it, where I could just pick up my bow and go shoot it anywhere. And get that feeling of, I was chasing that feeling of putting that arrow right where my sight was, and I could replicate that. With hunting is way more disappointment than there is success, and just hang on with me, and I'm getting there. But anyway, when I met my wife, I wasn't really doing that much anymore. I had some negative experiences with deer hunting and deer hunters, and uh, just wasn't interested. And I never really put, the effort in that I do now, because I was inherently lazy and um, other things, other stuff. But anyway, so I met my wife, wasn't really doing any of that kind of stuff. Had some kids. I said, listen, I need to teach these kids how to do something. I need to pass on some sort of skill to my children. The only one that I know of that I have that I possess is I was pretty good at shooting a bow at one time, and I knew enough about hunting that I wanted to get my kids into it. So she said, okay, let's go. But now here's the difference. Now I have to, of all the shit that I had and I got rid of, now I have to basically invest in that at full price now. So it was a little tougher. So fast forward, long story short, I have kids. I'm getting back into hunting. I am now going to do this at the professional level, right? We moved into a new house. My basement walls were bare. I thought, in order to validate myself as a hunter, I need a wall full of dead shit, dead animals, to validate me to be successful. I needed to chase the feeling of success. And so I started doing it. And I was putting a lot of time and effort into it. My children were very small. They were going with me at times to do this, and at other times they couldn't because of the 8-year-olds in cold weather is just not a good deal. But we're doing it, right. We're picking up. We're having some success. We're shooting big deer. I am mixing it up with other hunters that I know are good deer killers and big deer killers. And I'm trying to do the whole iron sharpens iron thing where I am trying to be somebody that deep down I know I'm not. But because I'm chasing false idols, I have to keep putting deer on the wall. I have to keep doing things that put me in position to put deer on the wall. I have to have multiple places to hunt. I have to put multiple tree stands up. I have to run trail cameras. I have to do these kinds of things. I have to do all this stuff as a hobby. None of this stuff is paying me in a return other than the satisfaction of killing good deer and having a lot of meat in my freezer, which I really do enjoy. But passing on a skill to my kids, my son has been very successful at killing very good deer. We're filling the walls. Everything is going my way. Not every hunt is successful, but every hunt brings me some sort of lesson that gets me closer to my goal. And then this year hit, and we're coming up on another year of deer hunting. I'm not really motivated. My family makes fun of me a lot for feeling that way every year, but somehow I still manage to put in the time and the effort and kind of fire myself up to do it. And none of this I really think is at the expense of anything, right? Like I'm not neglecting duties, and I'm not foregoing things for the sake of deer hunting. I do believe that if you're going to do something, you do it well. And in order to do it well, you have to spend time doing it. You have to invest time in doing it. And again, it goes back to the why are you doing it thing. Well, it's supposed to be fun. Well, guess what I realized this year? I'm not having fun. But here I am continuing to do it because I'm outcome based. I am going to go, and it feels like every time I've been out this season, I leave the field with some sort of disappointment that I didn't meet my goal, which was to kill a big deer. And some of those juvenile some of that juvenile excitement I felt when I first started deer hunting is certainly long gone. Like just the feeling of a deer walking by your tree stand without that deer knowing you're there is is really something, if you don't experience, is pretty cool. Like it's pretty cool on any level. Any size deer is pretty cool. And I remember getting so nervous now I also didn't see near the deer that I see back then because I was a shitty deer hunter. So it's not like I was having deer encounters every time I went deer hunting back in the day, because I wasn't, because I was just a shitty deer hunter. Now I'm less of a shitty deer hunter and I see a lot more deer. But and I used to get any deer, used to get so like, oh my God. So that feeling has been gone this year. And I was trying to discredit that. Every time I got up to go, it felt like a chore. Every time I sat in my tree stand, I felt like I was inconvenienced. Like it's sitting around waiting for deer to walk by is just hard for me to do. And if I sit there and I see a bunch of deer walk by, but they're not the right deer, then it just seemed to just, oh shit, guess I gotta come back. So I did the other day what I needed to do to put some fun back into the sport. So for the last week, I've been monitoring public land parking lots. I've been looking for public land pressure. Public land is any land that's available to anybody to go hunt deer, squirrels, turkeys, whatever. Everybody in the state of Iowa, everybody in the country really has access to the same amount of land. So Tuesday, I went out and I gathered my equipment, my tree stand, and my stacking sticks, and a backpack full of ratchet straps, and I was going to go on my public land adventure. And so, which meant that I had to read the terrain, read the sign. I had to outsmart the deer. I had to outsmart other hunters. I had to figure out where to go to where I could be successful in not just shooting a deer, but seeing a deer on highly pressured public land. And I hunted this place 10 years ago. I had some success there where I shot a buck. I uncovered a small piece of that property that I thought would be great for future hunts. And I've never gotten back there because of whatever bullshit you put in your head to stop you from doing something you really want to do. Fear, mostly. I'm probably going to run into other hunters. I won't see any deer because they're pressured. No big deer live there, whatever. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so Tuesday I go, and I use my physical capabilities to pack in a bunch of heavy stuff. I walk in over a half a mile. I don't see any sign of any other deer hunters. I see uh, plenty of deer sign to keep me interested. I pick the right tree. I assemble the sticks. I climb up the tree. I put in my tree stand. I take my time. I'm doing, I got the wind in my favor. I've figured it out. And at 4:30 that night, a deer walked by. It wasn't one I was going to shoot, and it was not in range to shoot anyway. But at that moment, I went, "This is what it's all about. This is why I'm here. I had a good day. I successfully did what I intended to do, which was to find a spot to set up and see deer." Okay. I could have left at that moment happy. But wait, there's more. Well, I see a couple more deer, and behind me, I hear a twig snap, and I know what that means. So I turn my head, and guess what? Here comes a buck, a good buck. And I was like, holy shit, I'm going to shoot this deer, because that's what I came here to do. I came here to kill a deer. And now I have been presented with the opportunity to kill that deer. And so my expectations just shot through the roof. Went from seeing deer to killing deer. Changed the goalpost. At this point, I've changed it to where it's more difficult. The buck does what he's supposed to do. He does deer stuff. I do what I'm supposed to do. I wait for him to clear. I put an arrow in him, and I'm like, eureka. Just shot myself another public land buck. And He walks away. He doesn't realize, I don't think he realizes what happens. He walks away a little funny, and I'm just like, oh, this is not going how it's supposed to go. Like, I don't understand what's happening right now, but this is weird. He walks away. He gets out of sight, and I'm pretty sure I hear him cross the river, which ain't good. But in the entire time, I keep expecting him to just tip over dead at any minute. That doesn't happen. So I get down, I go to where he was standing when I shot him. I look at the arrow, and I'm instantly a little disheartened that the shot probably didn't go where it needed to go. I'm optimistic that it is still a lethal hit. Because of experience in the past, I elected just to go home. I'm not even going to look for this deer tonight. I'm going to go back in the morning. And so, pretty sleepless night. Again, trying to manage my expectations. My expectations are I do not have a good feeling about how this is going to turn out. I get up the next morning. I get some help. My son and my neighbor, we're going back out to look for this deer. We get on the blood trail. I feel more optimistic based on the blood. We get to where I think he crosses the river. I put my hip waders on. I go across the river, and I find blood across the river. So this is half the battle right here. We figured out the across the river. This is where he's going up. We get to the top of the riverbank. I get a bad feeling about the blood trail, and I say, listen, we need to back out. I need to hire a dog to come in and find this deer. I'm not interested in walking around for 2 hours just not to find it. Like, we need to find this deer. And it's not because the deer was huge. It's not because I had to find the deer because it number one, I owed it to the deer. And number two, I needed to put a bow tie on this experience with a good outcome. Because it was the expectations were moderate at the beginning, but very high at the end. And I needed to finish this with a good outcome. So people lose deer all the time. It's just a fact of hunting. It's not a good fact of hunting, but it is a fact of hunting. Sometimes you shoot one and you just don't retrieve it. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But the point of this is that I believed in me. In order to save my soul as a deer hunter, we needed to find this deer. It was symbolic of doing this type of hunting where I have done exactly what I needed to do. This thing, the script could not have turned out any better. It is everything that I wanted it to be, except finding the deer at the end of the blood trail, which is what I've learned is my hunting version of the 300-yard drive off the tee. And I am not going to be denied this feeling. So, and we also spent yesterday doing some uncomfortable things. I had to do some door knocking on some private property to try to get access to the other side of the river. That if I do recover the deer, it would make it easier to get I had to make some phone calls and talk to people that don't know me, strangers, and I had to ask them for things where they were certainly capable of denying me those things, and they did, which is fine. But some good things came out of it too. I had to teach my kid that sometimes this is what you have to do. Like, it's easy to give up. It's easy to quit. It's easy to say, oh, I've seen this before. The deer's not dead. But I owe it to him, and I owe it to me, and I owe it to the process to put every ounce of effort into this as possible with the expectation that we find this deer. Well, it didn't really, the idea of hiring a dog was not necessarily well received in the family. But I believed in it enough to put up with what I'm gonna have to put up with, which is, you know, not it's not positive, and I understand that, and I'm okay, and I'm not. It's not a defiance thing. It's not a whatever it is. I have a belief in me that I need to go through with this. This is how it has to go. I need this. I need to recover this deer for a lot of different reasons, and I'm going to do what it takes to do it. So I found a deer tracker, and guess what? We went out last night at 7:00. It was very dark. We had to cross the river in the dark, and we had to try to recover a deer that I shot 24 hours before that, and we didn't find it. And I could feel the optimism go away pretty much almost instantly when I saw the dog get on the trail that I knew that the deer was on. And then somehow things just kind of changed. And you kind of get that sinking feeling of, is that the expectation of what I thought was going to go on there that night with me bringing this deer home and celebrating a win was not going to happen. The aftermath of that is still very raw. And I know people will say, well, Jesus Christ, Jason, it's just a deer. It is. But there's a symbolic nature of it where you acquire wisdom, knowledge, physical capability, and you put all that to the test. And you put all that to the test against the animal, against other hunters. You're using resources that is available to everybody, and you're trying to win. The standard of deer that I'm willing to kill on private land is higher than the standard of deer that I'm willing to is than on public land. I probably passed up a couple deer of this same caliber on private land. But something the other day on Tuesday, when that buck walked in, came over me and compelled me to shoot this deer. And I think the reason is because I was having fun again. Like, deer hunting was fun again. It was me pitting myself and my wits against this animal on land that is accessible to everybody. And my expectations, I was managing my expectations at a level that was reasonable. I'm not saying we need to lower our expectations so that it's not like this whole thing where you got to, lower your standards to increase your odds. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's important for us in our profession and our job to manage the expectations of our shifts and our day, patient outcomes, interactions with people. The other lesson I learned the other day was, and I said this out loud, is so I'm trying to find this guy who owns this house so I can get past this house and get into this private land. I need to access the public land through his private land. And I had to call and leave a message, and we found where he works. And long story short, excuse me, I was worried that I wasn't going to get a phone call back. And I think that was because I think inherently people are good. It was just that we seem to see, that there's a handful of people that are not. So my expectation of what was going to happen with that interaction was very low. This guy's not going to call me back. This guy's not going to give me access. This guy's probably a jerk because he has a lot of money. And turns out only 2/3 of that were true. He did call me back, and he does have a lot of money. But he also wasn't going to give me access. And that's okay. His prerogative. Anytime you ask for something, you run the risk of being denied. And I understand that. But again, it was about managing my expectation. If I go into every situation with the expectation that I'm going to win or have a positive outcome, I'm always disappointed. And you would think by now I would have a good grasp on that, but I don't. My standards are high. I feel like my effort matches my standards. And when those standards don't get met, I'm almost always disappointed. And I don't really know how to mitigate that. Other than this brings me to my final point, and then I'll wrap this up after 40 minutes, is there is a big difference between having goals and using that goal as a false idol. Meaning I believe in being successful. I believe in winning. I believe in obtaining what you want to do. I believe in that. But I also believe that you can take it too far, and what there's a fine line with everything, right? There's a middle ground to every situation, everything. Not everything's black and white. There is some gray. As much as I hate to believe it, you can take it too far. And so I always thought that if I held my standard to, let's say, 150-inch deer, and then at the end of the season I lowered my standard to 140-inch deer, that I was basically quitting, or I was less than, or I can't do this, so I'm going to lower my expectations so that I can do it, so that I can feel good about myself. Well, sure. I get that 100%. And I try to justify that in my head because it makes me feel like a quitter. But am I quitting or am I pivoting? And I think pivoting sometimes means you are trying to reach the same outcome. You're just trying to do it a different way. So if the outcome is to fill your deer tag, or to shoot a buck, or to have a certain experience, but you have to find a different way to do that, then I think that's okay. I don't necessarily think the way I took things of I'm only successful if my basement's full of deer. Because guess what? My basement is full of deer. In the last 10 years, we have filled in turkeys because I love turkeys, probably more than anything in this world. I'd rather turkey on the deer hunt. I've said that officially. My basement's full of deer. I went out the other day, this whole season, with the intention of adding another one. And the feeling of disappointment and has increased this year more so than any other year. And I went out the other day on public land and I had probably the best time. I had fun again. And I think that if you're chasing something that makes you foundationally different as a person and not in a good way, I think it's easy to reevaluate that and try to figure it out. And at the same time, I do believe that if you believe in something strongly enough and other people don't see that, I think it's good of you to hold those beliefs and kind of take some of those consequences with it. Unless that belief is, growing a horn out of your head and wings and calling yourself a unicorn, then I'm going to say you're on your own on that deal. But I also think it's important that we manage our expectations every day. That we manage our expectations with our families, with our jobs, with our administration, with our managers. That if your expectations are so high that it takes the joy and the fun out of it, that we're constantly, perpetually annoyed because things don't meet the expectations in our head, and that is driving us to be different people than what we really are, then I think it's important that we sit back and take that into consideration into how much we really want to keep doing the things that we're doing, whether that's a hobby or your current job or your profession. And I think that it is worth some reflection. I am certainly different today than I was on Tuesday. Maybe not for the better, maybe not for the worse. I don't really know. I'm still trying to evaluate that. Um, I do know that I found joy again in the way that I deer hunt with less expectations, with less of a goal. And I think that I was trying to be something that I'm not, which is a big deer killer. And if you're out there trying to be somebody you're not, and it's causing you strain and it's causing you conflict, it's causing you, whether that's internal or external conflict, it's causing you to not experience joy in success, then I think it's time that you take a step back and you try to figure out what it is that you want and what it is that you um and where it is that you're going. I hope that made some sort of sense, I guess. I got a good, so I don't know, every episode I say the same thing. I don't know what the future of this program is. I really don't. Um I seem to find things to come up with every now and then. No, but I will tell you this. Next week, finally going to sit down with Matt Ireland, who was the incident commander of the Perry School shooting event. I believe the investigation's over. Um, we're going to talk a lot about that day and logistically, sure, but more importantly, how we came out of that day different as responders. And I've really been looking forward to this conversation, only just because I want to get inside his head. And he's been in the game a long time. He's seen a lot of stuff, and I'm interested to know how this incident, being so close to it, has changed him, has changed his family, what kind of outlook he has on things. He's got a school age kid, how he feels about that, and I think it'll be a good conversation. So we're going to record that next Wednesday. That'll be out next Monday. Aside from that, thanks for listening to me today. As always, I'll leave it at this. Work hard, be kind. Talk to you next week. Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Shift Change Podcast. I need to ask if you would leave a rating. I think that it helps people who are new to the podcast find it quicker. It doesn't do me any good, but it does help other people that are looking for the Shift Change Podcast on Spotify or Apple. It just comes up quicker the more ratings that you give it. I don't, whether you give it a 2 or a 5, it doesn't make a difference. It just helps other people. If you need to get a hold of me, contact me via my email, the show email, which is talkshiftchange@gmail.com. Or you can message me on Instagram at talk.shiftchange. Excuse me, at talk.shiftchange on Instagram. As always, thanks for listening. I could not have imagined how well this podcast has been received. So, as always, I appreciate it. Work hard, be kind.